we needed students to come and help us out with this particular project. And we had a student who was in transition. And this student, what was amazing to me about this student who received services from CFIT, who assisted with this project, and just to talk about her role, the class that she took, was that you would never have known that this student faced those challenges, that this student at times did not know where they might sleep. And, you know, that just touched me to see how poised and, you know, elegant she was and articulate, and how she was able to not let those things impact her desire to have an amazing education, be a great student, and be a wonderful representative for her school to these leaders in our state. And so that for me is an inspiring story. And it shows me that if we can just give all kids, you know, like her, regardless of circumstance, the same resources to succeed, we can really help with that achievement gap that we see.
That really is an inspiring story because, again, as I mentioned, I'm familiar with a lot of the disparity in opportunity that some of the students have back where I'm from, which is not very far. I'm from Fredericksburg. That's where my mom teaches. So another question we have for you is what was your college experience like?
My college experience was, it was good overall. I mean, my best friends are the friends I made at college. And my hope for you is that some of the best friends that you make in your life will be from your college experience. So I went to UVA, and I graduated in the early 2000s. And so it's funny, I just turned 40 this year. So most of my friends from college are, you know, we're all turning 40 together. And to know that we have been friends over half our lives is amazing. And it's funny to me, like as a person who's taught college and now talking about my college experience, I always used to tell my students like you, when you finish college, you're not going to remember probably this class, me, or like things you learned in the classroom. And I'm proving it true because the first thing I talked about was my friends, because those are kind of the things that last and experiences that you have while you're at school. And so for me going to UVA, I think it was really a time of exploration. It was a time where I really had to find my voice. I think there were definitely some things, some challenges that happened at UVA that I hadn't expected. You know, growing up in Virginia, I went to small private schools, as I said. The school that I went to for high school was predominantly white, all girls school, as I said. And I had some things happen to me in senior year, which kind of preface things that might happen to me in college when it came to race, relations, and things like that. And so I'll give you an example, a couple examples. So in high school, I wrote an article. Do you all know who O.J. Simpson is? You probably only know about him because of the Kardashians, because of his proximity to them. But that was a big deal when I was growing up. The verdict came out. And that was like an interesting thing because it really kind of split my school that when that was coming up. But also, you know, other examples, I wrote an article after that happened, just kind of talking about the verdict, but also just kind of why people tend to silo in these racial lines. And if you went to my school, even though it was a small percentage of Black students or non-white students, you would see a cafeteria that all the Black girls sat at one table and all the white girls sat at tables, and we weren't mixing. Um, and it's voluntary where you sit at lunch. And I remember I had a teacher, my English teacher. She was from the North. She was from New Jersey, and she was new to our school, which was a very traditional school. And she came to the cafeteria and she looked around and she was like, "This looks like the 1950s. What is going on here?" And that's actually what inspired me to write the article that I wrote. And I remember when I wrote that article, it came out and all my Black friends were like, "This is amazing." Because I just was making observations. I was like, I know we sit together out of comfort. Wouldn't it be interesting if we broke out of our comfort zone and we did something different? We actually have the power to do this. And so my Black friends thought it was awesome. And I remember being in the lunchroom, I'm 15, and the senior class president stood up on a chair, because it's a small school, so we all had lunch at the same time. She stood up on a chair, she was waving the newspaper around, and she didn't know who I was. And she just called my name because I was listed as the author. And she was like, "Who wrote this trash?" Um, and I was like, my heart, like I can still, even this happened a long time ago, but this is how stuff stays with you. And so I kind of knew with this experience, she's calling my name, she's screaming, she's got her little posse because she was like the captain of a sports team. They're behind her. And I thought they wanted to beat me up. I thought they were going to fight me. And I've never been in a fight in my life. So I was like, oh my God. And I went over and we talked. And what was really interesting was she was wrong. She was wrong in this instance. But the student mediators that they had in place made us both apologize to each other. And because they were seniors, I was younger, I felt like I wasn't in a position of power, I did that. And these were instances that kind of shaped, I know you're talking about college, but made me think like, what is going to happen in this is high school, what will happen in college if I have a different opinion or if I want to voice, and it kind of foreshadowed things that would happen. And the last instance was when I got into UVA. It was a small school, you called it over the announcements and people would cheer. Aaron Burke got into University of Virginia. Well, and they called all the schools you got into whenever you got accepted. And anytime this happened in class, everyone would erupt into cheers and be excited. And I'm not saying this, I mean, these are negative instances, but I was friends with these girls. I really overall felt like my high school experience was great. But when it was my turn, and they called me out for going to college, being from Virginia, a lot of people apply to UVA. It is competitive, but no one clapped. No one clapped when I got in. And this is the first time I had heard that. And it was because I was the only one in my class who had gotten in. And then these girls who had known me for 4 years, pretty intimately, who knew I was in all the APs and honors I could. Like I said, I had like 600 service hours, presidents of clubs, all of that work went to nothing. And my whole college experience and acceptance in their minds was based on the one thing that was different, which was that I was Black. And that may be something that you've heard of before. And this idea and perception that I stole someone's place when I got there and they didn't. And I won't even give those arguments any time. But that for me foreshadowed part of the difficulty I would have in college, which was my very first year. That was like an overarching theme. And for a lot of the Black students who came to UVA, which when I went, it was actually a bigger percentage than now, it was about 10% of the student population. It didn't matter if it was teachers, it was like teachers accusing you of cheating. Like, and it's like, dude, like I've never cheated a day in my life. It was, feeling like I had to sit up front and sit far from people, or I was going to be accused of something. It was this presumption of guilt and unworthiness that was really kind of sad, a sad piece of my college experience. But the good piece that came out of it was the friends I talked to you about at the beginning and how we formed a group that was going to help each other get through difficult situations, whatever they were, racial or not. It could be boyfriend issues, it could be whatever, but we were going to help one another survive and thrive. And because of that, that core group of friends that I have my, two of us have PhDs, one is a lawyer who's about to probably be in charge of a huge policy. She's up for that director of policy in Virginia. People who are just doing amazing things, that, doctors, lawyers, like, who persevered in the face of, when you got there, a teacher literally telling you, you will never be a medical doctor. And actually saying it's because you're Black. Like college teachers saying that Black students don't do well in this class. And so I think the other thing I learned in a backward, sad way was just perseverance and the ability to not let others' perceptions be your reality.
Do you think things have changed for the better in the last roughly 2 decades since you went to college in terms of the perception that professors have on Black students and the opportunities that are presented and available to all students?
I wish I could just say yes to that question. Unfortunately, there's a thing in higher ed called tenure. You guys heard of that? Do you know what tenure is? So this is going to impact you. So I'm excited. So tenure is actually something that is going away because it's expensive, but it's still around. So if you have tenure and you are a professor, it basically means you worked your butt off when you were young and became a new professor. And there's this 7-year process where, the department chairs are like in your classroom, like every student eval, you have to, it's called perish or publish. So you need to be doing articles and research journals. You need to be like out there. And it's 7 years of intensity. And if you don't have enough articles, if your student ratings are low, if you aren't teaching enough courses, then you will not get tenure. And what tenure grants you, you need to look up your professors. And it's not a bad thing overall, because it's trying to protect